You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to today's episode. Today we have Trisha J. Woldridge, who is a pan-genre, pan-media, award-winning chaos word witch. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. She does quite literally everything. If there is something in the world of writing to be done, Trisha does this. Trisha, why don't you tell our audience a bit about yourself?
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. I ended up coining the pan-genre, pan-media chaos word witch sometime at Necronomicon, which is a convention for weird fiction, Lovecraftian stuff, but now more diverse to make Lovecraft roll over in his grave, maybe. When I was trying to think of a quick way to introduce myself, because I edit, I do nonfiction, I do fiction, I do super ginormous long fantasy worlds. I do fiction for children. I do journalism, and I also teach. So yeah, all the things because neurodiversity.
Yes. On one of our episodes, we had talked about how we can't put ourselves in just like a box. I mean, I guess my common theme is magic so far in my work. Like nature stuff and magic stuff is always in, whether that's my poetry or within my novels or whatever. But otherwise, it's just no, boxes aren't fun. Yeah. And Rachel's the same way. She's like, yeah, let's crochet and talk about cozy stuff. But then also, I'm going to write a dark fantasy. And then also, I'm going to write poetry about nature. You're
Yes. Yeah, my latest project to tackle, I got a copy from the 70s of Patrol
That is
Guide to
such
the
a
Hero.
book.
I'm going to
That is
do
such a good
blackout
book.
poetry of all of the cards. So that is
Um,
a
yes.
fool for that one already, right?
yeah, I did the fool
It
for
was
that one. It came out
so
really
good.
fun.
It was so good.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
okay.
Yeah.
Trisha, I know you as more of a horror writer. Can you talk to us a little bit about that experience or that process of things? Because as I told you before, I'm a big chicken. And I can't do scary anything basically. And so the idea of look, it's me. But for those who are listening, she just showed a picture from one of her books of a zombie chicken. So can you tell us a little bit about how you go into this horror space, especially being so imaginative too? How do you not get nightmares, or do you get nightmares and you're just okay with them?
It's more that I get nightmares and I'm okay with them. I also have very lucid dreams. So I also tend to be very active in my dreams. Many years ago at a ReaderCon, there was a really great talk on geeks and they didn't have the term neurospicy at that time, but people who are, neurodivergent and lucid dreaming. And there's a huge overlap in geek community and what we now call neurospicy and lucid dreaming. So I've always had very lucid dreams, and I've always just been all right, it's story time. All right, brain, sleepy story time. A lot of them have been really terrifying. I do wake up, but then I just kind of, well, I'm going to deal with this by writing stuff. And I originally did not get into writing horror. I started very, very much fantasy, sci-fi, heavy on the fantasy. I was a D&D player. I met my husband by crashing his Rocky Horror Picture Show party and saying, who plays D&D? We started dating within 2 weeks, and we've been friends with most of the same people since. He proposed to me with a rubber chicken 6 months later, speaking of chickens. But he was very much into horror. And I, literally the only horror movie I had seen up until I went to college, because I was a very sheltered life, I saw the Blair Witch Project. And then my friend literally teased, I was the driver. I had a Chrysler LeBaron 78 ginormous monster. And I was driving through the woods in Western Mass, and he was just jump scaring me all the drive, and I wanted to kill him. So that was an old friend of mine. But that was my extent of horror, except in reading. I had read a bunch of Stephen King. I loved reading horror. I had a whole shelf of R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike and all of those. But when I thought of going into writing, which I did from a very young age, I brought my vocab sentences home proud to show them off. I always figured I would go into fantasy because I loved unicorns, I loved dragons, I loved that like ensemble cast about to save the world from some big evil. But all my stuff ended up being really dark because, see prior note, read a whole bunch of horror. I also did like also read it way too early because we didn't have a lot of money. So we did yard sales. So what do you see at yard sales a lot of? Stephen King, older horror. So Trish Brain got horrified and liked it. And then I meet this my husband, this really cute guy who also does D&D, and he's like, "Have you ever played Vampire the Masquerade?" And I'm like, "What is Vampire the Masquerade?" He's like, "Oh, well." So I got introduced to like horror gaming, and we started making a tradition. Even back then, one of our first dates was like for Halloween, was one of our early dating was and we continue this every Halloween. We just catch Trisha up on the way too many horror movies she has not yet seen. So I just got this intro to horror movies, and I got it. I didn't expect to get it, but I did because I had that reading background. And then when I started writing, I just would do terrible things to my characters. Just that's like worse than what I read in my books because, well, I wanted to see what would happen. And I wanted them to overcome like even worse stuff. So I started doing that. The first publication I had was with a friend, actually, and it was a really dark urban fantasy that we co-wrote. But my first publication kills a dog, which
Oh,
I did the thing that you're not supposed to do.
You did
But I
the
got paid.
bad.
Yes, I killed the dog. And then the next thing that I got published, and this is my most frequently republished, was a really dark semi-vampiric sequel to Snow White. And that was a novella. It's called Mirror of Hearts. I got that published like several times over. And since then, all the stuff that I get published, like all my major publications, have all fallen into horror. Like I've written all these things, but honestly, the stuff that like people like, that people give me money for, tends to be the horror stuff and the darkest stuff too, that like gets reprinted. I have several stuff that's like in reprints that I keep getting paid. "Oh, you want to give me more money for that story I wrote?" Sure, yes, please, I'll take that. So like I was Circlet Press would do like a 30 days of horror, and I was their only flash fiction piece that had a trigger warning because it was a story because it included suicide, and basically the main character was using suicide as a booty call for death. And
interesting. All right.
yeah. So yeah, I go in the dark places, and I do it with a lot of compassion, so I think that's why it works. So I look at like all this dark stuff, and I look at the compassionate side of it, and why do I care about? Because to me, horror is when someone you care about is in danger. And I was picked on in school. I was bullied a lot. So I wanted to look at the people that are considered, and that's why actually a lot of my themes is like who gets to be called the monster, you know, who is being the scapegoat, who is getting all that. How do they take that and turn it into a way to empower them? Sometimes you can do that for evil. Other times, you like, you know what? I'm going to take this and do my own thing, and I'm going to do it better. Like, you know what I mean? So playing with that, and a lot of that comes back to like empathy, like having empathy even for monsters.
That's really
It's
cool.
a very
I
long
was
way to answer your question.
I was laughing when you were talking about Blair Witch Project because I saw that opening day, and that day proceeded to then go on a camping trip with my mother in the woods. And we were there. My father couldn't come; he had to meet us the next day. So it's us two in a cabin in the woods. She wakes up in the middle of the night. Maybe this will inspire something for a story. All right, creepy time. She wakes up in the middle of the night and hears like a on the floor. All right, a mouse got caught in the mouse trap. But she smelled the smell of gas. There was a gas leak in the cabin. The mouse woke her up.
Oh,
If the mouse had never gotten caught in the trap and she hadn't heard it woke her up, we would have been dead. So we had to then get out of the
wow.
cabin, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So we couldn't start the car because we didn't want, because you could smell the gas outside.
What?
So we
Oh my
had to
gosh. Yeah.
walk with a flashlight a couple
Oh,
miles to get to a phone to call the park police because this was the day we didn't have a cell phone. There was no reception. So we had to walk to the phone booth that you could pick up to call the police. And they got there. They're like, there's no way you two should have woke up. So that was my scary Blair Witch Story project. Sorry, I had to go off on a
that is,
tangent
oh
because
my
it
gosh,
was so
that
weird
would
and
be
creepy.
such like a, oh, that would be such an awesome, like, because I also like turning tropes on their end, because the cabin
Yeah.
in the woods trope, that would be
Yeah.
such a great way to like change that up. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe
I was
we have
just
to
like,
do a
that would be
story
such
with
a
it. I don't
short
know.
story.
Yeah.
Then what
Yeah.
happens? And did somebody purposely create that leak? Like, all of these what ifs that are going
Yes.
on with that.
Mhm,
Yeah, and
mhm.
like you too, like I was very attracted to all the cozy things. Like I love cozy mysteries. And I was going to start to write a cozy mystery. And all of a sudden I started getting really dark with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this is a dark fantasy and not a cozy mystery. And I'm like, why is my brain want to go to all these dark places with my characters?
Yeah.
Well, you go ahead.
No, sorry. Like, yeah, it's a thing. Brains.
Well, it's I always think about like what role a story plays in a reader's life, right? Because the stories that make like the most impact on our readers and stuff or on ourselves are stories that we can process emotions from, we can process, like have our own realizations about things. They come into our lives at the right time to then like help us process something, help us understand something, help us activate something, and those end up being our favorite stories. And I think that with certain genres that maybe they have like fantasy maybe leans more into like finding your power and your magic or something, or and romance leans into like being authentic and finding love, as your authentic self. So like, what do you think with horror? Like, what is the high vibe component of horror? Because like I think part of it could be just like facing demons,
Yeah.
but
Actually, I
again,
love
I
that.
don't watch or read horror at all. So I'm just making assumptions.
I think one of the big things with horror is, and a lot of the people who I know who are in the horror community, a lot of the horror writers you meet are honestly some of the kindest, most loving people in the world, because we've seen some shit.
Yes,
And
and
what
yes.
I what I think pulls us towards horror is so we are allowed to swear, right?
Yeah.
The world is a fucked up place. There's horrible. The worst monsters are humans.
Mhm.
We have seen that, we have experienced that, and we're still here. So how do we deal with that trauma of what we've gone through, what we've seen? When we read it in a story, there's that assurance of we're not alone. And depending on the story, sometimes there's the sense of like, not all horror has hope, but my favorite horror tends to have hope. That's survival. There's a lot of found family in horror. There's a lot of what do you do when someone you love is in danger? And
Mhm.
thinking about that. So there is a level of empowerment. And the idea is that the stakes are higher. Like there's empowerment when you really ought not have any power. And so also what we're seeing in horror, especially in the past 5, 10 years, which is kind of jumping a little further than you asked, but we're seeing more diverse voices in horror. You're seeing people come in and tell their story about how their identity is taken, how they have lost bodily autonomy, how the world's actively working against them. And all of those are themes in horror when you're looking at even your I call them basic, but your slasher films. Everything is working against these characters. And you've got the ones where and this comes to some people who get a very nihilistic overview of life from because it's been crappy, where no one deserves to be saved. It doesn't like let's just laugh at the absurdity of this because everything is awful. Others are, let's survive this. How do we work together to beat these ridiculous odds of this massive corporation and or eldritch gods or this super powerful character that we don't understand? how do we survive that? How do we get there? And that I think is what horror is taking the experience of the darkness that exists in the world and facing it however we can. How do we want to deal with? How do we want to mentally continue with life, knowing what a shit show it is? And so the people who love horror. They also read broadly. That's the thing that I do notice is that horror readers will read across genres, but the fantasy sci-fi are less likely to like even look at horror. I mean, it is a much smaller amount of authors and all of that. So like those of us who are readers, just we need more books, even if we don't read all of them. We need them. We need them.
Yeah, we need them. Like I need more yarn. I don't need more yarn. I need more yarn. You know?
Oh yeah, I literally had to
Yeah.
go buy a new bookcase because my 2 bookcases are officially full. I literally just got a book in. I'm like, oh shit, I can't fit it on my shelf. We book dragon. Yeah, I actually just recently saw something of like making a TBR jar. So that way your
Ooh.
TBR, like you don't actually have to make any decisions. You can just like pull a title out of the jar and just read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then you have to find it.
But you just put it on your bookshelf with all your books and there you
There
go.
you go. Then it's a scavenger hunt.
That
Where
bookshelf or that
and then ooh, that one sounds good. Ooh, okay, TBR one back in the jar. So I'm interested to know, or first I want to say it's really neat that horror readers tend to go cross genre because I thought maybe that was just me because I need what I call like a palate cleanser. So it's just like I can't just do horror all the time. But
yeah.
I do like to go into that horror element, like, I have a trauma in my background, so, like, I get to, like, vicariously live through these people, and that's something that Nina and I have talked about on some episodes is the impact of fiction and how, like,
Yeah,
reading a book lets you
absolutely.
process and try stuff on. So I'm curious for you, like, when I think of horror, like, there's different types of horror, right? Like, we have, like, psychological horror, we have, like, more slasher horror, um, and I'm wondering, like, where do you personally see kind of, like, the difference between something that's maybe, like, suspenseful, things like that, versus something that then crosses that line into horror?
Okay. I talk about this a lot. It's one of my favorite topics. That we have horror as a genre, but horror is really an emotion. Horror can get put into any other genre because let's take a look at Aliens. It's sci-fi, but it's horror. Let's take a look at honestly, a lot of the Song of Ice and Fire gets really dark. My fantasy gets really dark. Good friends and mentors who sadly passed away, James A. Moore wrote really dark fantasy that was like very much on that border of horror. So to me, what brings something more into the forefront of what makes it a book that you can like stamp horror on the spine of is that the purpose of the book, the purpose of the plot and the character development are to explore the things that frighten you and horrify. Is the purpose of the plot, the main thrust of it is that exploration of the uncomfortable things. Um, like you can have, any other genre be doing all these things and also explore some of these difficult things because a lot of them do. To me, the best books all have elements of horror in them because we need to face what we fear. We need to know we can get through it. But for a book to be specifically horror, like whole reasoning behind it is I want to explore this specific thought experiment in this book is to explore something taboo, dark, terrifying, unsettling. And it doesn't even have to be that like scared horror. It can be I am really uncomfortable, like in that uncomfortable place of like how these decisions this person is making just like turn my stomach. And it's not necessarily scary. It's just really going to those dark parts of the brain, which aren't always, again, scary, but are deeply unsettling and all of that. So that to me is what makes horror horror.
That's
I feel like I
awesome.
want more. I want more on this because okay, here's my thing. I like dark, but I'm a big chicken. And so, like I like one of my favorite books is more of a dark academia, which is The Ninth House.
Mm,
And like it's dark It's got like spooky elements to it. It's got, like demons and ghosts and things like that. But it's it didn't give me nightmares. And I don't know if maybe I'm just because I attempted to read one horror book last Halloween and I chickened out of it because I started dreaming about taking my intestines out. So
Mm.
so
So,
it was just like, so how me as a
so,
reader who wants to read some stuff for Halloween, how do I discern what to read?
so maybe I should introduce you to the quiet horror genre.
Okay,
Tell
yes,
me
please.
more.
The quiet horror genre is the more closer to the gothic romances, because gothic romance is what came before horror. We're gonna ignore the Castle of Otranto because it's absolutely, I mean, it's great. Yes, it is. It is the first gothic novel. It is ridiculous. Giant pieces of armor fall into a castle. It's scary. But if you look at the other ones, so I'm a big fan of Anne Radcliffe, for example. Anne Radcliffe's The Italian, which was actually a take on I forgot his name, but The Monk, which is a psychological thing about this monk who's lusting after this young virgin, and awful things happen. The Italian is told in the perspective of the woman navigating this world where she is an object. She is being lusted after by this person, by this monk, where it's, a sin to lust after her. She wants to keep her family money, land, things like that. So she has got land and all that. If she gets married, so navigating that, but it's horrific in the sense of she is working against a system which is late medieval, early Renaissance Italy that is designed to keep her an object and powerless. And it is horrific to do that. There's no intestines, not even a rape scene. There's almost, but that dread, that kind of quiet existential dread of this entire system is working against me, and all the ways that she ends up losing power, the way that she has to run, the decisions she has to make. That's that is the gotten that's kind of the predecessor to what's a quiet horror. Quiet horror is also very often teasing like a cottagecore horror, not quite cozy, but it's when and a lot of people also will either file grief horror under that or back and forth, where dealing with grief is a thing that we ignore as a society. We do not give grief the weight it deserves. And that's horrifying. Like, you've lost someone or something very, very dear to you, whether it's a loved one, a pet, a friendship, all of these things that we need to take the time to mourn. We're denied that very important healing strategy. And that is horrific. So you have a lot of horror that they call quiet horror, grief horror, that is dealing with how these emotions affect us and how horrifying it is that we don't have the power to embrace those. So there's not a lot of gore. It is also, it's not just psychological, because psychological is that's very higher intellect sense of I need to figure out, like, we're playing this chess game and someone's going to win. Who's going to win? That's where the tension comes from. It's more of a empathic psychology that is horrifying, because look at all of the ways that our brain needs to function that we're not allowed to let function. Look at the way that we deal with things. And this goes with any gender and gender expression. How is that suppressed? How are men told they can't grieve? And what happens when a man needs to grieve and can't for so long? What kind of damage does that do? You know? So that's a different kind of horror. And that to me is what I find more interesting. So you don't have to be gory. You don't need to have, intestines coming out. I mean, sometimes that's entertaining, or like you want that gross out effect. Other times, to me, what's scarier is the hopelessness of situations and how you have to work to be able to do normal things. Like one of my stories that I've gotten the most positive response to. It's called Mass of the Greatest Sin. And It is the horrors of being a fat woman in the American medical system. And she keeps getting denied. Like she goes back and her scale weight hasn't changed, but she's gotten smaller. What's happened is she's got this eldritch beast kind of growing inside of her, and it's heavy, but she's losing weight, like losing space, not weight. And all the doctor is seeing is the numbers. And the world is like treating, and then you have that trauma of being fat. And even when you, because I had gastric surgery, sleeve surgery, and there's an identity crisis when you go from being like, I'm still fat, but less so. And I can 100% tell you when I was at my lowest weight, there was a huge difference in how people treated me. Huge. And you don't trust that because when I was growing up as a fat girl, if someone was nice to you, they were good. They were setting you up to hurt. So now you can't trust who's being kind to you. And it's because of the way you look. And so, and that builds inside of you. And so I turned it into monsters that carry a weight. And then finally the monsters come out and do some things. And does she want to embrace this monstrous side of her now?
That's so powerful, and I think that's true with, like, the trauma and the expression. So, like, I have a lot of trauma, and so same thing, when somebody's nice, I'm like, "There's something wrong with you, and when is the shoe gonna drop? Because I don't trust you." And it's
Mhm.
like, I'm like, "God, you gotta stop doing that," but then I go and I trust again, and then what happens? And I'm like, so now our family thing is we don't use the N word of nice. If somebody is nice, there's something wrong with them. So, like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, nope, nope. We trust no one no more. And so, like, when you were talking too about like the gothic horror, so I know like you like Loki. So I don't know if you've ever seen it's not a book, but the movie Crimson Peak, which is a gothic
Love it.
horror.
Love
See?
it.
Okay,
Love it
I
so
like that.
much.
I
Right. And
love that. I was
yeah,
just like,
so like
if I
you
was
have
like,
the
I'm gonna
horror in
give some
there.
horror a try, and I'm like, oh, Tom Hiddleston, of course, and I loved it.
Yes.
And
How
it's
can I get
yes.
It's that
books like that?
psychological creep factor. Like yeah.
Yeah. And Shape of Water is also horror. I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't yet, but it's the same
Mm-mm.
director, isn't it?
So it's Guillermo del Toro. Shape of Water, Pan's Labyrinth. There's not a lot
Oh,
of gore
okay.
in Pan's. There's a lot of monster and some body horror because it's the Fae. And if you actually look at Fae legends, they're fucking horrifying, but it's gorgeous. It's a dark fairy tale at the roots of what fairy tales really are. So Pan's Labyrinth could be another. It might still give you nightmares because of the imagery, because that also is a thing, because you don't necessarily have to have that horrific imagery. One of the I just did a quote, I gave a blurb to Romy Stott. Book just came out. You will probably like it. Again, this fits the quiet, not quite cozy, but quiet, unsettling horror. It's called There's Nothing in the Basement. And it is basically about a failing marriage, but there is something in the basement, but they're not they're ignoring it, like they're ignoring the failure of the marriage. And it's quiet and it's gripping. It was like single sitting reading. There's really very little that I mean, there's like a sewage explosion. Like that's the kind of level. It's like the everyday gross. There's like that almost magical realism. Could this be something else or not until you get to, you know what I mean? So that also, and it was very unsettling and I loved it. So there's a lot of like really good quiet horror out there that you might enjoy that is not gory or necessarily nightmare inducing. But I'm going to jump in the like at the same time. So one of the anthologies that I edited is Wicked Women, which is all female identifying authors from New England. And the story that sticks out in my head the most is the one that gave me a nightmare. And it wasn't at all gory. It was a postpartum depression horror story. And it was about this woman in a coffee shop that only this mother seemed to be able to see and notice. And literally they go to the coffee shop, they have a conversation, something clicks in the mother's head. Like there's no gore to it. It was just so unsettling. This woman that no one else could see because you also have that fear of no one's going to believe me. Like, am I going crazy because no one believes that I'm in this pain? I have several chronic illnesses, and like I have this ongoing joking collection of like every time the doctor says, "Well, that's not a common thing," or "How are you walking?" Or, "Well, I am. I'm here. How is your I know my body's doing the thing, so it's real."
Maybe it's just in your head. Maybe it's just stress. I've been through that before.
And that's a big thing, especially with horror from like women and other marginalized voices, is the people don't believe you. And that is horrific. Like, I know something's real. And that level of gaslighting, that societal and just cultural level of gaslighting is terrifying because you don't know what to trust. And that's why you have these people who are constantly saying, "Oh, it can't be that. It's a monster." No, no, it's not like you're taught to ignore evidence of something that people don't want to deal with.
That's a really great way of looking at horror is like that a lot of the pieces of it are of really good horror, I guess, maybe is the allegory of something deeper. And it seems like that might be kind of where the genre kind of like sprouted some of its early wings with like I think about like Jekyll and Hyde, which I don't know if that's considered one of the early horrors or not,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
or like Frankenstein or those types
right.
of things because like it was addressing a social question and
Yes.
then turning it a little monstrous and then adding in that extra layer of tension and so very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Very one of the things we did want to talk to you about is your Kickstarter. So you're just as of recording, you're just wrapping up your Kickstarter. Can you tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that and like
Yes.
why?
So I did so the Kickstarter is yeah. So as of recording, we've got 6 days left, but I've already met goal and we're heading for like more stretch goals. It is a dark fantasy duology. And again, it is very dark. And it was many years in the making. It's a series. It's called The 27 Kingdoms. I have many books already started in this series. I had gotten it was originally published in an earlier version with Chris Kennedy New Mythology. And then life happened and chronic illness and family stuff, and I couldn't meet deadlines. They were wonderfully gracious. I got my rights back. They paid me good, amicable. And I'm like, well, I got this stuff that I should do something with. And I've been going to conferences and conventions since 2002. My very first one was Dragon Con because I like trial by fire. But I had been paying a lot of attention to authors using Kickstarter as a platform, almost as like a pre-sale sense platform. And so I jumped into researching that because I am like, if I'm going to do this myself and I get to have creative control, one, I can make it more gay. Two, I can go even darker. Well, because literally, the darker I go, and again, this has just been in my head. When I go dark, that's what people are buying and want more of. Um, so yeah, sure, let's go darker. I threw in some additional chapters, which the editor that I worked with really liked, and said worked. So there's additional chapters. And then the second part of the duology is the book that I got hung up with that hadn't come out yet. And the basics of this one is there's a princess trapped in an abusive relationship who is told she was saved from a dragon. And she's just been gaslit for as long as she can remember, but she can't remember that long either. She has scars on her body that she said that she's been told have come from this dragon. But she can recall her husband giving her some of those scars. So she's like, so she actually finds the dragon trapped under the castle. And before she can set herself free, she has to set him free. And then together, they might be able to, with friends, because they do meet friends along the way, they might be able to save the kingdom from demons. So it's it's so the total is 6 books. And because I was growing up and got things at yard sales and also was growing up in the 90s in school where they didn't finish trilogies because publishing and like, book 2 didn't do well. We're just not going to release book
Yep.
3. That
Thanks
great
for
great
that.
so I wanted to make sure that I could and again, knowing my ADHD, knowing that, I could have a flare up of something at any time, I wanted to give people a complete story. So I rearranged everything and I broke it into you get a satisfactory ending. Yes, there's space for more, but the main plot of this set is told. So you've got this overarching, it's going to be 6 books and it's already mostly written because I also ended up writing the next two books in the series on accident. It was supposed to be the first third of the second book in the duology that's coming out now. And then I accidentally wrote 250,000 words because ADHD and my little fake characters, very opinionated about this whole deal. So those two are a complete story there. And then the last two are so do we get to defeat these demons or what? Oh wait, there's okay, yeah. So you get that final unveiling of like, you thought this, but hey, but in between, like each one gives you this conclusive like, so, if I get sick and you have to wait another like year for me to get the next duology out, you're not cliffhanger. So that's what I wanted to do. And that's why doing it this way, having complete control over it, being able to hire my friends because I have freaking amazingly talented friends. Because I've been working in publishing for so many years now. I get to, give money to these people and say, hey, I need this art. Hey, I need this. And they can give it to me. Like I have pretty maps. I've got really awesome layout. I have really cool additional art. So things like that are all part of like I can do this now. So that's why I ended up deciding to do the Kickstarter. Again, it's been well received. I'm looking forward to like actually putting out the books and getting them out there and getting some more reviews on them because I like how they came out now that I made them darker and a little bit more queer. So it doesn't show as much in these first two, but
That's cool. I love the idea of the duology and getting that complete story because I also grew up in that era and it was very disappointing when things would happen like that.
A lot of
It is
people won't
so
even start a new series until
Oh,
they
yeah.
have a complete.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, and I think that's great
Yep.
too for your marketing as well, where they get to
Hmm.
go in and then they instantly get the other one, like, they're hooked and they
Yes.
know that you're serious and you're following through on it, so that is just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to having it out. At this point, we are looking to have it delivered to the people who back us come November. If all goes well, you know, Murphy and all that. And then actually officially released because we want to get it to the backers first because
Oh, yeah.
that's our
Mhm.
thank you. Official release hopefully December. So the books will be like out. Amazon will make it look like it's out because Amazon and that's another whole conversation, the joy of Amazon. But yeah, have that out, ready, and out for people.
Very cool.
So if you were to give an author some tips on having a Kickstarter for a book, do you have any like quick tips that you would give them?
Do a lot of look at Kickstarter. Just watch, like actually follow people who are doing books like you have on Kickstarter. What are they offering? What are their price points? Like what are their points for backers? Um, give yourself a lot of time. Give yourself plan what you want to do and then double it, triple it if you're neurospicy. Um, you can have, and so I was going to launch this originally in April. And in February, my mom went into the hospital and we've been in and out of the hospital since. She's doing much better now, but that just kind of put a lot of things on hold. You can actually have your campaign and fuss with it. You don't have to launch it. Like you can always change the launch date. Take your time with it. If you're not sure that you can commit to it, wait. It's okay to wait. You don't have to hit launch on it. Um, and again, just follow other people, support other Kickstarters because other Kickstarter people will notice when you follow them. I also go to a lot of conventions and conferences and talk to people. The Kickstarter person in charge of the publishing arm, Oriana Leckhart, is amazing and gives you lots of information. So yeah, look at what people are offering and see how you can fit like do that thing in publishing where it's enough like everyone else where it's recognizable, but it stands out. So it's not like the same as everyone else and find that balance. But if you look at a lot of them, follow a lot of them, even if you just like throw in $1 and just get all their responses and all of that, you can see how they get done it, and that helps a lot. There's also a really good, if you're on Facebook, a Facebook group called Kickstarter for Authors, where they have a lot of questions, a lot of discussions, especially with our tariffs now. So if you're doing any fancy stuff, some of the printers are overseas, and that has had an effect.
Wonderful. And on the realm of following, where can our folks find you, follow you? How would you like them to connect with you?
So I am Trisha J. Woldridge. It is a novel friend. When I opened my business for editing, writing, and all of that, I opened it a novel friend. No one had taken that, so I did. And so if you type in Trisha, a novel friend, you will find me. That's my website, which is still being updated. That is my Facebook. You can find me as, I think my non-business one is actually Novel Friend, and my author one is Trisha J. Woldridge. Instagram, it's Trisha Woldridge, but you could probably still find me on Novel Friend. I have not done anything on Twitter X, whatever, in ages, and I have not moved to Blue Sky because I have enough stuff. I do have a newsletter though that I send out, and you can sign up for the newsletter on my website, which is anovelfriend.com.
And we will have all of those linked in the show notes and in the description below. Amazing. This was such a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for coming on.
Ooh.
And I guess I'll just have to adventure into some horror. I mean, now that we're in spooky
I don't
season.
have a lot of gore in my collection.
Okay. Okay. I might have to check that out. That
I do have talking cats.
I do love
No,
talking
but
cats.
yes.
Yeah.
Because what
Talking.
can go wrong with that? So
Awesome.
thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. So thank you.
It was a
Mhm.
pleasure. And I'm excited that we possibly converted Nino to doing some horror reading.
Thank you for listening. Check out the show notes for details and links from the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Special thanks to our composer, Micah Silverstein. Enjoy the rest of the music.